Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, good to have you back on, sir.
Hey, Paul, I was enjoying that bumper music there.
Yeah, I know. Sorry we cut it short. I wanted to get to the interview, but yeah, we'll get some more coming up here in just a minute, though. So tell us, where are you right now? Are you back in Arkansas? Are you in D.C.? What's going on with you?
We are in D.C. Right now and still in session, wrapping up the week.
Okay, so how are things? Like, what's going on right now?
Well, you may have seen the news on this. We voted on a balanced budget amendment. As you know, I've talked to you about this many times. I've worked hard to try and get a balanced budget amendment to the floor. I make this an issue every year, and this is the second time in the almost 8 years that I've been here that I've been given the opportunity to vote on a balanced budget amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we still had 6 Republicans who voted no. So I'm trying to figure that one out. We had 3 Democrats that voted yes, but ultimately we had 233 votes. You need 287 to send it over to the Senate, so we fell short over here.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's unfortunate. And right now it seems like there's if you read the media reports, I mean, the media, the liberal media, they're out there saying, "Hey, Republicans are worried and they're scared," and about the midterms and things like that. And then you hear, if you go to the liberal, really the ones that are openly liberal, it's like a blue wave is coming and that sort of thing. And so talk a little bit about that. I mean, what are your thoughts on the potential of a blue wave?
Well, I'll tell you what, the punditry has got it wrong consistently. They were decidedly wrong on President Trump. There must have been 90+% of the media that projected him, not just, we think he's, going to lose, but, we're projecting Hillary as the winner. I mean, they were doing everything in the world they could to, line up for a coronation, and they were all wrong. And their polling, underlying their projections, was wrong. And they haven't learned from anything. They haven't learned, their polling methodology was flawed, and they haven't learned, really what drove people to vote for Donald Trump in the first place. And I think that sentiment still exists widely across the country, and that you really want to see Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, because she's not doing her team any favors by continually going out there and talking about the crumbs of tax reform and things of that nature. And she had the temerity to talk about, to quote Martin Luther King, I think it was yesterday or the day before, talking about when there are people in abject poverty, there shouldn't be people with opulent wealth. Paraphrasing, and she is one of those that is opulently wealthy. I mean, it boggles the mind that she can stand there straight-faced and say some of the things that she says and expect people are going to connect with that and believe it. She comes from a very wealthy family. She's one of the richest members of Congress, and yet she's going to try and pretend as though somehow she's got a connection to the poor, downtrodden people of America who are barely getting by, and then at the same time calling their tax reform bonus, crumbs.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge disconnect there. The left is lurching further. I mean, the Democrats in Washington are lurching further and further to the left. And as long as they have Nancy Pelosi as their poster child, I don't think they can expect the blue wave that they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree with that. I'm just hoping that. To me, let me just say this: there is not a positive word that the press can say about President Donald Trump, and without even getting into the Russia situation and their constant obsession with that. But it seems to me that if you really kind of take a long view of this over the first year of his presidency into now, there's a lot of traps and nets that I feel like that the media and the left, they fall into their own nets. They fall into their own traps for this guy. I mean, right now we're looking at an amazing situation that happened last week. Saudi Arabia recognized Israel's right to exist. And you look at the Korean Peninsula potentially being denuclearized.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Thank you so much for being with us today. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us. The phone number 870-275-9799, and you see it on the screen there for those of you watching at facebook.com/Conduit News. You can sound off there in the comments if you'd like. Facebook.com/Conduit News. All right, well, we are, kind of awaiting more developments here from the public corruption trial of Senator John Woods and Randall Shelton. I guess there was a slight medical condition. I think one of Randall Shelton's attorneys was lightheaded, and so they had to postpone the trial or something. That was in the court and apparently had to do with allergies and asthma inhaler or something like that. So we certainly wish everybody a speedy recovery who's affected by that. But we still have a little bit of last week. There was a lot of developments, and really and truly, I would just say that former State Representative Mike Neal, who pled guilty already to taking $38,000 in this kickback scheme, he took to the stand. And it was not just me that saw the humor in what he said. Last week we had a pretty big laugh at his expense because he said that one of the reasons he got involved in this illegal scheme was because he was hanging out with Senator John Woods, the accused. And he noticed that Senator John Woods has a well-furnished Little Rock apartment and sports memorabilia like a signed, autographed Michael Jordan photograph, as well as a signed, autographed Pete Rose baseball bat. So that's what led him to, on the stand, say basically like, hey, this guy has some connections, or he knows how to carve out a financial niche for himself. All the while, it was just really kind of a ruse because we found out last week that Senator John Woods had 4 or 5 bank accounts, and most of them were overdrawn several times, and so it's interesting. And also, and I'm not the only one to take notice of the humor in this. By the way, the editorial staff over at Arkansas Business, they have taken note of the humor behind this as well, and it is humor, but it's. At the same time, it's like we need to demand so much more of our public officials. And we have to realize, though, that even though our system, our democratic republic, is a great system, it's still, because of the condition of man, it's going to attract those who want to, who don't have a desire to create for themselves, but rather just want to get involved in the power structure and take what they cannot create for themselves. And once you realize that, we really realize, I realize we got to send the best and the brightest down there. And, there's a lot of you guys out there who've thought about running for office, and you don't because, when good people run, you get really, dragged through the mud. When good people run, you get dragged through the mud. If you run and you're part of the establishment, the political establishment already, or you have, the right backers, that doesn't really happen as much. But there's a lot of people that look, this is why, John Woods is why most legislators that have actual jobs to go back home to are the good ones. Most of them are. All right. If you don't need the money, if you don't need the job. Arkansas business. Yeah, throw that back up there. I'm sorry. I do want to go over this because I feel like the editors at Arkansas Business do a really good job. Their first financial incompetence is not a crime, but desperate people do desperate things. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? This article goes on to talk about how, we have these classes now for our kids. There's a lot in elementary school. They're now trying to teach some level of financial literacy for our children. I remember when I was in the 6th grade, I believe we learned how to balance a checkbook. You didn't do that? Or maybe we didn't learn how to balance a checkbook. We learned how to write a check. I can't remember. I think we learned how to write checks. Well, it probably phased it out. Jerry Seinfeld has a good bit where he says a check is just like a note from your mother. It's like, I don't have any money, but if you contact these people, they'll give you some. That's exactly right. Anyway, so financial incompetence is not a crime, they say. It's why businesses often see, but people do desperate things. Desperate people do desperate things, and they say that the reason why businesses, if you're going to apply for a job, a lot of times business owners will want to know your credit history if the job you're applying for, if you're going to be handling money, you're going to have access to the funds, right? They're trying to prevent embezzlement because they know that desperate people do desperate things. Greedy people do greedy things. So they referenced the Gazette's report, which is what we were referencing, I think, last week, where we found out that this all started because of the grass being greener on the other side. What was the grass? Michael Jordan sports memorabilia, autographed Pete Rose baseball bat. That's how you know you've made it. It's essentially like in Arkansas, it's like over in California or Hollywood, it's like you got to have a Bentley. Here, it's much different. We have much lower expectations for what is the financial status symbol. Listen to what they write. It's demoralizing to think that someone charged with drafting, assessing, and voting on laws affecting all Arkansans had a negative balance in all 4 of his bank accounts. And this is the thing. This is the thing. It's like the well-furnished apartment, the autographed sports memorabilia, is all just not legitimate. A negative balance in all 4 of his bank accounts. This is Senator John Woods, again, the accused. They write, and a decade after graduating from college and 6 years after being elected, John Woods still needed someone to co-sign for a car loan of less than $10,000. So when the banksters got to look at where this guy makes his money, or more importantly, where he spends it, they said, we know you're a state senator, but yeah, we kind of see a pattern here of destructive behavior. This may be why everyone and their mom knew that John Woods was in trouble before the FBI ever started investigating this whole situation. And yet again, Governor Asa Hutchinson threw a fundraiser for him before John Woods decided he didn't want to run. He wanted to spend more time with family. Of course, now we know that it was because of the FBI investigation he decided to not run. But I'll say this again, if some establishment Republicans, including the governor, had their way, they would have rather John Woods got reelected and just resigned once the indictment was released. Meanwhile, see, they get a kick out of this too, Arkansas business. The Springdale Republican had a nicely furnished apartment in Little Rock, full of necessities like a baseball bat signed by Pete Rose and a signed picture of Michael Jordan. That kind of disposable income caught the eye of Micah Neal, the former state representative who, having pleaded guilty to his own corruption, was the star witness against Woods. And they write that State Representative Micah Neal, he had trouble making ends meet. The Gazette did report on the testimony, $125,000 or more. He was making $125,000 at his business, his restaurant, plus the per diem and the legislative salary. Top 10% in Arkansas, and twice the national median income. So he was receptive, they write. According to his testimony, Woods offered to cut him in, steer general improvement money to certain nonprofits, and get a piece of the action on the flip side. And it was the lifestyles of John Woods, the extravagance. So I decided to look up. I was like, what does Michael Jordan go for? Like, so just go to eBay, Joe. Click on over to eBay here. What is that? That's a zoom in on that first one if you can. What does that say? Is that Chicago Bulls number 23, Michael Jordan hand-signed autographed 8x10 with certificate of authenticity, $119. Okay. Let's see. We have a Michael Jordan autographed 8x10 photo certified for $78 right now on eBay. Scrolling down, Michael Jordan. This is the highest one here. Michael Jordan authentic autograph signed 8x10 photo, newly matted and framed for $224.99. Look at that. Wow, what an extravagant item, you know? I mean, can you imagine holding that? Can you imagine this being the reason you decided to get into an illegal grafting scheme or money laundering scheme? We have one more? Okay. Okay. Here we go. Here's a... This Joe says so this is starting to make sense. Here's a Michael Jordan signed autograph 30x40 jumbo photo of I guess a 1988 slam dunk for $2,195. Oh no. I mean, that's real change right there, folks. That's life-changing money right there. You can afford a $2,000 autograph. Wow, this guy obviously knows how to make money. I need to ask him what he's doing in Little Rock to make money. He also has another one, Michael Jordan signed autograph 24x16 photo, face-off versus, what does that say? Drexler and Bulls. That'll go for $1,795. Do we have any more? Are there any more? Is that the most expensive? $604. Anyway, come on. All right. So I don't know which autographed. I don't know which specific one John Woods had, but let's just say it was the one that's $2,000. Come on, $2,000. And you're facing jail time now. You know? That's the temptation. It's just ridiculous. All right, what about a Pete Rose autographed baseball bat? What is that going for? $116? $107? $62? $179? $299? Okay. $89, $30. You can get one for $30. Oh my goodness. Oh, but you know, I mean, hey, for some people that's you can't help it. You know, that's just like, wow, that's a status symbol of choice there, as Dave Ramsey would say. Folks, we're going to take a break. Okay, we do have one for $1,395. It's an amazing Louisville Slugger Pete Rose autographed bat. With 10 inscriptions. There you go. Anyway, so there are some high-rolling Pete Rose bats out there. Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio this morning. Just doing a little John Woods recap of the trial. There actually are some other details we need to dive into. We will. You can get a head start. Go to conduitforaction.org. Look up the newest or the second. I guess it's not the latest article, but it's one that came out on the 13th of April. Bribes or loans. The defense in this case, they want to say that these kickback payments were not bribes. They were loans, or they weren't kickbacks. They were actually loans. We'll get into that here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Order. In the name of public safety, order. This meeting of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards is called to order in the name of public safety. What's on the agenda for the day?
We have before us today, per our summons, a representative from the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing cosmetology, cosmetologist, and all things hair care and beauty.
Right. Of course, I remember this. In the name of public safety, ma'am, please state your name for the record, and thank you for appearing before us today.
Yes, my name is Cosmo Glamour Gazette, and I'm here in response to a letter our state board received claiming we're in violation of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. In the letter, you claim that our licensing board is in violation of your rules and regulations because we have failed to, quote, pay tribute, end quote, and therefore have not been granted a license by the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing licensing boards to, quote, shake down the Arkansans who have an interest in cosmetology, end quote.
In the name of public safety, order. Yes, Miss Gazette, we sent you that letter because you have not obtained our approval in the form of a license from our board to distribute licenses to the professional class your board strives to protect. In the name of public safety, of course.
Of course.
So, in the name of public safety, and just so we can get this for the record, you do admit and agree with our board, the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards, that you have not obtained a license, thereby revealing your board of cosmetology to be operating outside our rules, regulations, and authority?
Well, sir, I'm not sure our board agrees that we need a license from your board to continue to shake down, to look out for the public safety of Arkansans.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Well, it seems we are at a bit of an impasse if we are not in agreement that your board owes us tribute.
Sir, maybe we could ask and see if there's a bureaucrat in the house.
Ah, yes. Yes, that would shed some light on things. A bureaucrat. Yeah, in the name of public safety, is there a bureaucrat in the house? We need someone to resuscitate and confirm our authority as the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards.
Here.
Ah, yes. Oh, good. Come to the end of the table in the name of public safety and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, I am Despot Ringleader, the head of the bureau governing all state bureaus, and it is my testimony the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards does have the authority to demand tribute in this situation and will provide in exchange a license to say they can continue to operate in the name of public safety.
It's hard to argue when the public safety is put at risk. Very well. We will consider Mrs. Ringleader's testimony as truth, and we will pay tribute in the name of public safety, of course.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Using absurdity to The absurd. Telephone number 870-275-9799. You can call or text that number. That's 870-275-9799. Let me see here. I want to see if there are any comments on this. No, there are not. Talking about this. Oh, yeah, there's. No, they're not. I'm sorry, not on this particular story. Talking about this Arkansas business story where they see the humor that we see in the entire John Woods public corruption trial, about how really what we see is just how, I don't know, is petty the right word? Somebody on our Facebook feed wants to know if the Michael Jordan autographed photo and the Pete Rose autographed bat, what if they were fakes? And how consistent that would be, how fitting it would be if they were actually not even the real thing. Yeah. I think it really just shows, I've said this before, but these legislators at the Marble Palace, obviously I'm not referring to all of them in this way, but the culture that is down there is very much like the culture of a, of a high school. Anybody remember being in high school and being inside this, I guess, I remember, if you go from being inside like this a culture of a high school, and then you go to college and you realize, oh gosh, wow, that was high school, now I'm in college, and it's like it's kind of like there's a shift there, you know what I mean? And but let's say, like, if you remember when you were in high school, it was just, this was my own little world. It was got my own little corner, and this is my own, and there are just different priorities than, say, the priority of maybe high schoolers and things that are going on for the most part inside that bubble. Maybe not necessarily the priorities of people out there in the outside world. That's the way I feel, and this is just as true of any institution, but that's the way, that's how it's frustrating as the voters, and we're doing other things, but their whole life as legislators in the Marble Palace and, getting to be at court there or getting to talk to court members that are on the King's Court, it is, it becomes everything. It becomes the only thing that they see. And so when they hear the talking points and they get their instructions, and this is where we're going, this is the direction, and it's only a select few that even make those decisions, they start to follow orders, and they start to parrot their talking points. They start to figure out how they're going to explain their votes, and especially if they have to go back home to their constituents, especially if the thing they're voting for is actually going to serve the interests of the Marble Palace and not really serve the interests of the people that sent them there in the first place to represent them. Don't worry, the establishment has talking points ready for you. The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language will secure them. And I think one of the reasons this program is now being so successful is obviously we are on several stations across the state, but one of them is in Little Rock. The Answer. That's actually now moved stations, I told, on the dial, or moved on the dial over to 101.1 FM, and that's great. But that alone is now getting this information penetrating into this Marble Palace bubble, where they realize that just because you have an R next to your name and you tell the other legislators who also have R's next to their name that we are together pursuing a conservative agenda, this program, unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to do this, but I mean, we're essentially providing an alternative that is, I believe, truthful and factual as to what is really going on. And right now, government is growing. And when government grows and you're claiming that it's shrinking, I find that, I think it's a deception. It's an attempted deception on the people of this state, and I think that's wrong. And so we're going to continue speaking the truth. Back in just a moment. If Kim Jong-un and the meeting actually takes place, I mean, there's a lot of potential. There's there's a lot of positive, and then there's some potential positive things, and I think President Trump is an integral part of that right now.
No, I think that's true, and I think that you would think after almost a year and a half in, as he's been president now for almost a year and a half, he's proven them wrong at every turn. I mean, I don't always agree with necessarily the tone or the type of rhetoric that the president puts out there. But one of the things that I've had to come to terms with, and I had to do this with Obama, you've got to look past the personality and look at the policy, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, our economic trajectory has improved tremendously. Opportunities for people across the economic spectrum are much, much better. I mean, historically better. And so, I know it's easy to focus in on someone with a big personality, be honest about it, a big ego. It's easy to get focused in on all of that. And that's one of the things that I've had to condition myself to is to look beyond that and just focus in on the policy and the numbers. And you'll see that there is an awful lot to be excited about that has transpired over the last year and a half or so, and that's directly attributable to this president. Mm-hmm. At the same time, President Obama may be one of the most charismatic individuals to occupy the White House, certainly, in my lifetime. Was a great speaker, very eloquent, and I met him 2 or 3 times, and he's very, very friendly. But his policies were the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were terrible. There was very seldom anything we agreed on. And so, again, you have to get past the personal, presentation and focus in on the policy. And if you can do that, you can make a better judgment about whether you support this policy or that policy.
Yeah.
Take away the personalities and focus in on the policy.
Yeah, it's it's what you do, for sure. Actions are bigger than words. And let me we're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. I mean, you said he proves them wrong time and again. I mean, think about when he came out and he said, I found out that I was wiretapped, and the media freaks out and everything else. And and then, of course, you being on the Intel Committee, and you guys are voting to release that memo, and we now know, we know that was true, I mean, and is there any more fallout from that, by the way? I haven't really heard anything else to come from, that memo, but that memo was very revealing.
Well, that's why you haven't heard anything more about it, because it was accurate, and then of course the Democrat response to it was inaccurate and full of pejorative and personal attacks that really just were sort of a knee-jerk reaction.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. Good morning to you. Give us a phone call or a text message, 870-275-9799, if you would like to contribute to the program, or you can feel free to sound off over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Today, believe it or not, I didn't. Patriots Day is today. Just kind of snuck up on me. Officially, Patriots Day in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Wisconsin, and Patriots Day in Maine is an official state holiday commemorating the anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord, the first battles of the American Revolutionary War. That's today. 2018, April the 16th is when it's observed. The holiday was originally celebrated on April 19th, the actual anniversary of the battles fought in 1776. And since 1969, it's been observed on the third Monday in April in Massachusetts and in Maine, which until the Missouri Compromise of 1820 was part of Massachusetts. The Monday holiday creates a 3-day long weekend. It is also the first day of a vacation week for public schools in both states. Okay, so anyway, those states are observing Patriots Day, the American Revolutionary War, the battles of Lexington and Concord. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Wonder, again, I always bring this up, it drives people nuts, but I'm just curious. If you look at the status quo, you look at where our government is and what it's doing now, or how much it's grown, or how it just seems there's always excuses as to why it's got to be the way it is, especially at the local level. You just kind of wonder how many people would be, redcoat sympathizers. I'm just curious. I mean, do we really? How many people today really understand how fragile the freedoms that we have are? How many of them take our freedoms for granted? How many of them know that the benefits of our freedom is not something intuitive? We don't really appreciate them until they're gone. How many people actually know that who serve in public office today? And it's a really, really good question to ask yourself, especially if you are in public office. Over at conduitforaction.org, there is a short piece about Senator John Woods. Speaking of, what essentially is we're talking, this is what leads to, if you don't recognize the benefits of liberty and the pitfalls of big government, then it leads to this dishonest government that we have. It leads to the public corruption that we're seeing coming in the headlines, and there's more to come. Former Senator John Woods is accused of taking bribes in return for directing general improvement grants to Ecclesia College. According to the Demgaz, quote, defense attorneys have said the money transfers to and from Woods were loans and money to pay back loans. This is their defense with a straight face. Wasn't a kickback, it was loans that John Woods is going to pay back at a later date. If so, he never reported the loans on his state ethics report, Conduit for Action reports. Unreported loans are violations of Arkansas ethics law, but if Woods beats the felony bribery charge, he won't have to worry about state penalties for failing to report the supposed loans. Did you know that? So if he beats the rap here, the fact that he didn't report on his financial disclosure that he did take a loan, of course he didn't. It was a kickback, but that's what the defense is saying. Do you know why? Because John Woods sponsored Issue 3 of 2014, and Issue 3 of 2014 essentially made it to where you could go back and change the rules in his life. If you're caught doing something campaign finance-wise that's wrong, you've got 30 days to correct it once it's brought to your attention. Woods successfully amended the ethics law to say a public official can't be sanctioned if he corrects his ethics report within 30 days after discovering the error. That's what we're talking about here is diabolical. I want you to understand something. This is diabolical. The times for correcting the report from years ago probably hasn't started ticking yet. Although he is claiming the payments as loans, he may not yet be aware that he didn't report them on his ethics report. Oh, I forgot to report it? Oh, I'm not aware I didn't report it. And that's when your 30-day window starts, when it's brought to your attention. Such is the state of Arkansas's ethics law. This is just a short piece. I have a text message here about this. This is not only diabolical, it's premeditated. Yeah, that's exactly right. This is all premeditated. If you look at what John Woods did with this ethics amendment, not only did it increase term limits when it deceived the people. And if you read the bill or read the title, you would have thought you were voting for term limits, but in reality, you're voting to keep them in office longer. Increasing their salaries. That's also what the Ethics Amendment did. So it wasn't an ethics amendment. It was the most unethical thing in the world because the whole premise was based on a deception, getting the people to vote for it because they thought it was something that was good. In reality, it was, and then not to mention what it actually did with political action committees, ensuring that that's the only way to try to, for a business to try to make a difference is to use political action committees, which, the big businesses were already doing. And, they basically, there was a way to amend it, and now you've got 30 days. As long you're caught, you've done something wrong. You're caught, and you have done something egregious. And as long as you correct it, I've often wondered. Okay, Senator Paul Bookout, who had to resign because of the ethics complaint that was filed against him. And you had, basically campaign expenditures were being used on campaign funds were being used on personal items, okay? And there was a whole long list of items or whatever else. Well, this was before the Ethics Amendment of 2014, I believe, actually went into effect. Or no, it was before it was amended, I'll tell you that much. It was before it was amended. And so I've often wondered, I really have, the way the ethics law is now, thanks to John Woods, if all these things were brought to former Senator Bookout's attention now, would he have been able to go back and correct them or, refund his campaign account or I don't know, maybe. I just thought, wow, that would be pretty, I'd be pretty frustrated about that. I mean, honestly, I think a lot of people would. John Woods not only carved out a financial niche for himself, not only did he take taxpayer money and launder it and get kickbacks, this is the alleged crime, but he also was prepared if he ever got caught. And he tweaked the law to where if he ever got caught or any of his buddies, and I'm sure some of his buddies voted for it because this is a great idea if I ever get caught doing something. He's basically taken the law and written it in a way that makes it really difficult for the citizens of this state to get justice if there's a dishonest politician, masquerading as an honest person. This is Conduit for action. Such is the state of our ethics laws. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. This was all known by most people down there. And it was also known by Governor Asa Hutchinson, which is why Asa decided to throw him a fundraiser, and we have the invitation. We've shown it to you many times. And, it just is what it is. Again, so many consistencies here if you look at Jake Files, actually. Asa didn't publicly ask for Jake Files' resignation until after he pled guilty. Even though we had for a year Senator Jake Files obviously was into stuff that was really, really bad. And the Republican Party of Arkansas refused to ask for his resignation. They were just waiting. It's like, why? Why? And it's the same thing. It's just like they would rather, and this is I guess a speculation, but it seems to me, it appears they would rather a corrupt politician who is in with the establishment stay in office until the very last minute, even though we may have article after article and report after report, or a sworn, in the case of Jake Files, a sworn FBI affidavit to get a search warrant that basically says they got this locked down. Yes, he stole taxpayer money and directly enriched himself. No, that's not enough. How else? Everybody knew John Woods was doing what he was doing. for the most part. I mean, some maybe did, but you understand the leadership. It's like, no, they knew the FBI was investigating this guy. Nope, he needs to stay in office. They want these guys to stay in office as long as they can. Now, if it was a conservative accused of this, and I mean somebody who actually had a conservative voting record that had stood up to the establishment, you can bet there would have been calls for the resignation of whoever it was. You can bet that the RPA would all of a sudden find we got to be on the moral high ground here. The RPA doesn't have to be on the moral high ground when it can, concerning Jake Files. They were silent. It was so strange. To the point where, and again, I've said this a long time, there is, in the Republican Party of Arkansas right now, there is disagreement over, whether a welfare program is a good thing or a bad thing when it's actually not for the truly needy. Okay, there's a divide there. There's a divide on the definition of what a tax increase is, a definition on what a tax decrease is, right? Or what tax reform is. But, I think most people, they assume that there are some just basic things that we're not going to disagree on. Well, that assumption is wrong too. They would the definition of decency. The definition of decency would disagree. The Republican Party is supposed to be that party that's got the moral high ground. It's like, nope, we can't. We have to protect those who are in the establishment. Wouldn't it be nice to have a Republican Party of Arkansas that wasn't slanted or bent towards the establishment, which is a big government wing, and instead one that is just there to vigorously defend the principles that are in the platform that represent and make up the Republican Party of Arkansas. Here's the thing: there are way more county chairmen and county committeemen across this state that are really conservative people, and yet and that is who the RPA should be representing. And instead of the RPA representing the Republicans at the county level, and I mean all of them, not just the chairman, but the committeemen, we have the RPA representing the politicians. We have the RPA representing the big government politicians and making excuses for them and parroting their talking points for re-election. Yeah, so I mean, in many ways, it's not bent or slanted. I mean, it is establishment right now, and that's really sad for all of the door knockers, for other Republicans who are Republicans when you couldn't be one, who for 30 years have knocked doors and have tried, and then this is what the party becomes. It's really sad. The RPA should be representing the counties to the legislator, and instead you have the complete opposite right now. The RPA should be way more grassroots focused, and instead they're top heavy, they're top focused. What does ACES say? What do these people say? What does the leadership say? And then they try to control the rest of them. Should be the other way around. You've heard it said before that let's just take like federal bureaucracies and stuff. Federal bureaucracies, they come in and they tell our state bureaucracies, this is how you're going to oppress the people, basically. There's no greater example of this in the past than the Environmental Protection Agency coming into Arkansas and basically telling the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, this is what you're going to do. And it's been theorized before, how great would it be if we could just kind of reverse that, and we could get good people in the Arkansas, not that there's not good people in the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. I don't know one way or the other. I'm sure there is. Or I'm sure there are. But if you reverse that flow, and it's just like, no, all of a sudden now the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is going to represent the people of Arkansas to the EPA. We will no longer be dictated to in the same manner, right? And that's what's got to happen. There needs to be this, like a polarity reversal. And to see, and I feel like that's good. And the same thing could the same thing for our entire electoral process, by the way. The politicians need to realize who they represent. You didn't get elected to represent the the establishment or the leadership. That's not who you were elected to represent. There's some of these guys that understand and know this, and they got voting records to show it, and it's really, really great and good. And there's there's a lot more that are, well, they're just even offended that I'm even saying these things. We're going to take a break. Check out this article, Bribes or Loans, on John Woods, some of the stuff that was revealed in the trial last week. And we've got another article we're going to be covering at 7:33 later about State Representative James Sturch and him working for a lobbyist. We'll tell you about that at 7:33. Folks, don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. I was going to the store last night. You're not going to believe this. What are the odds? What are the odds? Going to the store last night, and I immediately see a friend of mine named Lance and say hi to him. I round the corner, and I see another friend of mine who's also named Lance. And when I say friend, I mean more than just acquaintances. We're friends. As I'm leaving the store, I turn another corner, and a third Lance that I know, who I'm friends with. What are the odds of that? How does that even happen? That is crazy to me. I got home. My wife was like, what took so long? I was like, I ran into 3 different Lances. Like, and it's crazy. It's so nuts. It's absolutely wild. All right, phone number 870-275-9799. Hey, I always like to revisit this audio occasionally for people who think that, hey, Paul, your opposition to Obamacare Medicaid expansion in Arkansas is just old. It's stale. Why do you why are you still opposed to it? Hasn't that ship sailed? Well, here's the reason. This is the reason. This is the reason why I'm still opposed. Call me a purist if you want, but after you listen to this, I don't think you're going to call me a purist. I think you're just going to call me a conservative. Listen.
I'm proud of Arkansas. I'm really proud of Arkansas because both Mike Beebe, the prior Democratic governor, now Asa Hutchinson, the current Republican governor, have been among the most creative leaders in the country to figure out how to expand Medicaid in Arkansas, to take care of more than 100,000 people last time I checked. And you know what that's meant? That's meant not only that people got health care, it's also meant that rural hospitals have stayed open that are closing in states that refuse to extend Medicaid. And I know it's a favorite issue on the Republican right, and I know how hard it is to try to do something as important as extending Medicaid. But I'm proud of Arkansas, and I go around bragging on this state because this was bipartisan. The Republican legislature had to approve it, and I am really supportive of what Governor Hutchinson is trying to do to make sure it stays here in Arkansas to take care of people.
Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson. By the way, if you didn't recognize that voice, you must have, been in a coma for 2016 or for a long time. That's Hillary Clinton, who made a stop in Arkansas when she was running for president, and that's what she had to say. Yeah, I know, right? I know. You're outraged. And the establishment Republicans are, you know what they're saying in their minds? They're not outraged. Well, they're mad that this is going out on the air. The establishment politicians are saying, but, we work requirements. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, like you see, you guys still just continue with your mental gymnastics. Eventually, you're gonna run out of steam here. The fact is, this was about a socialist healthcare program from a socialist president, and you'll never get away from the fact that you're continuing to support it. And it doesn't make sense that you're a Republican and you're doing so. It makes absolutely no sense. We have one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
If Kim Jong-un and the meeting actually takes place, I mean, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of positive, and then there's some potential positive things, and I think President Trump is an integral part of that right now.
No, I think that's true, and I think that you would think after almost a year and a half in, as he's been president now for almost a year and a half, he's proven them wrong at every turn. I mean, I don't always agree with necessarily the tone or the type of rhetoric that the president puts out there. But one of the things that I've had to come to terms with, and I had to do this with Obama, you've got to look past the personality and look at the policy, and the numbers don't lie. I mean, our economic trajectory has improved tremendously. Opportunities for people across the economic spectrum are much, much better. I mean, historically better. And so, I know it's easy to focus in on someone with a big personality, be honest about it, a big ego. It's easy to get focused in on all of that. And that's one of the things that I've had to condition myself to is to look beyond that and just focus in on the policy and the numbers. And you'll see that there is an awful lot to be excited about that has transpired over the last year and a half or so, and that's directly attributable to this president. Mm-hmm. At the same time, President Obama may be one of the most charismatic individuals to occupy the White House, certainly, in my lifetime. Was a great speaker, very eloquent, and I met him 2 or 3 times, and he's very, very friendly. But his policies were the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were terrible. There was very seldom anything we agreed on. And so, again, you have to get past the personal, presentation and focus in on the policy. And if you can do that, you can make a better judgment about whether you support this policy or that policy.
Yeah.
Take away the personalities and focus in on the policy.
Yeah, it's what you do, for sure. Actions are bigger than words. And let me we're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. I mean, you said he proves them wrong time and again. I mean, think about when he came out and he said, I found out that I was wiretapped, and the media freaks out and everything else. And and then, of course, you being on the Intel Committee, and you guys are voting to release that memo, and we now know, we know that was true, I mean, and is there any more fallout from that, by the way? I haven't really heard anything else to come from, that memo, but that memo was very revealing.
Well, that's why you haven't heard anything more about it, because it was accurate, and then of course the Democrat response to it was inaccurate and full of pejorative and personal attacks that really just were sort of a knee-jerk reaction to the factual presentation we made in that memo. It's important to know that if that were false, if we had done put bad information out there, the media would be still harping on it. Mm-hmm. That memo issue has gone away. Then we're moving on to the next issue. Now, even our findings and recommendations that are coming out on the Russia investigation that the House Intel Committee just recently concluded, you haven't heard much about that either. And there was big furor over, they're shutting down the investigation too soon, and how can we do this? Well, you haven't heard much about that either. So you'll, in the next, week or so, that's all been submitted to the intelligence community for declassification.
Okay.
It'll come out, be made public, and there will be a minority view addendum, but they'll all come out as a single document, the findings, recommendations, and then the minority view. And see for yourself, make the assessment on your own. I'm not going to try and bias you or anything like that, and then we'll talk again when you've had a chance to review all that.
Okay.
And I would encourage you to do it. It'll be out there online in the public space, and you'll be able to pull it and look at it. And you will be absolutely amazed when you read it.
Okay, I'm now intrigued. I can't wait. That's sounds awesome. Because I just feel like I just know the media is what they're doing is they're certainly putting out something that I don't believe is factual when it comes to this whole Russia investigation and everything else. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. Congressman Rick Crawford, Can we talk about the tariff situation that's kind of been going on with China and there's probably some Arkansas farmers out there listening, and they probably kind of want to know what your thoughts are on that.
I hope there are a lot of farmers listening right now, because I don't know that.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Mr. Darrell Cook is on the line. Darrell, thanks for coming on the program, sir.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, sir, and I know it's early, and I really appreciate you spending the time. Now, you actually own a very controversial billboard, I hear.
Yeah, he's been getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, and so there's been, we interviewed a member of the Citizens for Jan Morgan group, that grassroots effort. They got together and they paid you to put a billboard up because it's your property, and then of course now we heard stories about the governor calling this person, trying to track down who it was, and now we have some other reports out of the governor's office and other places kind of saying that maybe it didn't go down the way it's been described, and so I just wanted to go directly to the source. You're the owner of the billboard, and I want you to walk through exactly what happened when you got a phone call from whoever you got a phone call from. Can you tell us the story?
Yes, I can. It was a couple weeks ago, and in fact, as far as the billboard, I met a guy at a rally, and I offered him the free billboard space, and he thanked me, and they were trying to raise money to come up with the panels and the install. Well, I get a phone call, and I'm not even aware that the billboard is even installed yet. The last text I got from this committee was they just about had the money raised to do the install. Well, about 2 weeks ago, I think it's 2 weeks ago, maybe today, I get a phone call, and the caller identifies himself. He says, "Hey, Darrell, this is L.M. Duncan." And I said, "Yeah, L.M. I know L.M., but we're not like personal friends. We know each other through political circles." And I said, "What can I do for you?" He said, "Do you own the billboard at Bono?" And I said, "Well, which one are you talking about? There's a dozen billboards at Bono." He said, "What at Bono Hill?" And I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, Jan Morgan's got her banners up there." And I said, "Yes. Why is that a concern of yours?" And what he told me, and this is his exact words, he said, "Well, Asa," he didn't say Governor Asa Hutchinson. He said, "Asa called Perrin, and Perrin called me to find out who owns it." And I was shocked. Now, of course, Perrin is governor. I'm sorry, not governor, but Mayor Harrell Perrin is the mayor of Jonesboro. But a lot of people, refer to him as Perrin. And I said, "L.M., you telling me that our governor called Harrell Perrin to find out who owns the billboard at Bono Hill?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we don't want Jan to get in trouble because she's not filed that on her," trying to think what he called it, some kind of expense report.
Yeah, well, it's the Citizens for Jan Morgan. They've put it together. The billboard's just gone up. You know what I'm saying? And that's just, it's an independent thing there.
Right, and I asked him, I said, I don't even think Miss Morgan even is aware of that billboard.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it just went up, and you're telling me that Asa Hutchinson is concerned that Jan's not turned it in yet? And he said, well, I'm not fussing at you. You're not in trouble or anything. I'm not fussing at you. I just think you need to make her aware of it. And I said, well, as soon as we get off the phone, I will call the person that I volunteered my space to.
And that's how it all started, because I mean, I heard a lot of people say, you're not going to believe this, and it's like, now this is first of all, you need to understand something, folks. This is happening across the state. There are grassroots people across the state that are putting their own money in specifically to put up Jan Morgan billboards. And so this is something that is taking place, but it's interesting. Asa has $3 million to run this campaign. Jan doesn't have anywhere close to that. And it's funny that there's one billboard in Bono, Arkansas, that is a very good placement, Daryl. I mean, it is on a pretty well trafficked when you're coming into Northeast Arkansas, or coming into Jonesboro rather. it's right there. But let me ask you this: did you feel intimidated at all that the sitting governor is wanting, kind of nosing around your business?
Yes, it did. It bothered me because I thought, first of all, I'm very proud that I was able to donate the space because I believe in having a conservative governor. But I did feel intimidated of why the mayor would be trying to find out who owns that. And then have L.M. Duncan, who was the former mayor of Bono, call me. Of course, the reason he had L.M. call me, I'm sure he figured L.M. would know who owned it, since L.M. used to be the mayor of Bono.
Okay.
But, I got a little rude, not real bad rude, but I got a little defensive for them calling me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think it was any of their business, and I thought when he went to use the excuse, oh, you're not in trouble, I thought, well, no, I'm not in trouble. It's my banner. I can do what I want with it. But when he said, he started emphasizing, they just didn't want Miss Morgan to get in trouble for not filing it. And I emphasized to him again, I said, I doubt that she even knows we did it. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know who all the contributors were, but like you said, grassroots went out and gathered up the money to buy the banners, to buy the install. And like you said, it's not a big fancy billboard. It's only a 10 by 20. Mm-hmm. And,
yeah.
But it's brought a lot of attention.
It just, to me, it's amazing. This is a Republican primary, where primaries are a good thing. It's amazing how sensitive everybody is on the ACES side of things, I mean, I feel like the Jan Morgan people are just getting their hands dirty and going to work, and the ACES people, all they can do, they can't really talk about the governor's record. All they have to do is try to, they're actually trying to stop her message from even getting out. You know what I'm saying? Instead of talk, it's almost a very negative campaign in a way. I mean, I know Asa has commercials and stuff that appear to be positive and things like that. I'm talking about his supporters. It's like the only thing they can do is try to throw stones at, or make it difficult for the other side to even get their message out. Instead, they should be talking about how great Asa is. And how,
that's true.
And they're not doing that. Instead, we're looking at, well, who put that billboard up? How dare you have a voice? How dare you, put out a different point of view or a different opinion? It's like, hey, this is a Republican primary, people. I mean, come on, this is an election. What's the deal? And, you felt intimidated. I think members of that committee felt intimidated. But at the same time, I'm wondering what exactly is going on here. Is there some sort of internal poll that the governor's office has that's making them extremely worried? I don't know. Why would you, if you're somebody said at the very beginning of this campaign, the best thing that Asa could do is just ignore Jan Morgan. Well, he isn't. He hasn't. I mean, he hasn't ignored her. Now he doesn't want to debate her, but he hasn't ignored her. He's tried to have her disinvited from Republican county committees all across the state, and he now follows her when she goes to a place. He goes there a couple weeks later, and now he's upset that grassroots activists are saying, you know what, we think we need better leadership, different leadership, and we're going to put our own money up and put up billboards. What is wrong with that? And why do they, why is Asa? And here's the thing, Dara, I don't know if you know this, but the governor's office, is now claiming that they didn't, that some of this didn't happen. And so that's why I wanted to have you on. I wanted to get to the bottom of it, because, I mean, this is not some vast right-wing conspiracy. Everybody got together and decided to make up a story that Asa's calling about billboards. You actually got the phone call, not from Asa, but from others who said that Asa had called, correct?
Right. Because I was totally shocked when Mr. Duncan called me, and I asked him, so why are you calling? When he said Asa called Perrin, and Perrin called me, I thought, the governor of Arkansas called the mayor of Jonesboro?
Yeah.
And I mean, who? And what I'd like to know is who called the governor, because that billboard couldn't have been up 24 hours, because I wasn't even aware that it had been. My last text from the person I was dealing with said, we got everything lined up. It'll be going up soon. I'll send you a picture. Before I even got a picture of the install, I'm getting a call from the former mayor of Bono.
Gosh.
And now, I didn't have him on FaceTime, so I can't swear that it was L.M. Duncan, but the man identified himself. Hey, Darrell, this is L.M. And the reason he called me Darrell is he's seen me at several city council meetings. He knows I'm running for JP. I've seen him in political circles for the last 3 or 4 years on some. I was involved in defeating the Jonesboro Property Maintenance Code a few years back.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I got well known with the mayor and some of his people.
Well,
not on a good way.
Yeah. Well, Darrell, I certainly appreciate you coming in, and you know, you're coming on the program, you know, with talking about how the billboard wasn't up very long before somebody noticed it. I mean, I guess there's a lot of Asa people, or maybe not a lot, but maybe a specific one. You know, people are just very sensitive and kind of militant, if you will. I'm reminded of a quote from a C.S. Lewis book. Even some of the trees are on her side. That's maybe there's just eyes everywhere. But Darrell Cook, thank you so much for being on the program. And hey, I understand. Are you running for JP? Did I hear that right? You're running for JP?
Yes, sir. I run for JP in District 6 in Craig County.
Okay. Well, good. Best of luck to you on that. And anyway, just keep in touch. Let me know if anything happens from this interview. I got a feeling it will.
Yeah, I hope I get another call from.
Yeah, I mean, you look, and you know, I'm not afraid of whatever the facts are. I mean, if it wasn't specifically Asa that called, if it was somebody out of Asa's office that called, and then it just got relayed to you, hey, Asa called. You know, I could see that being, you know, maybe that's the truth. I don't know. Maybe it was him personally, but I mean, I'll correct the record. I just wanted to try to get to the bottom of it and go right to the source.
Well, that's how it happened. And I appreciate you taking time to find out how it happened.
Yes, sir.
That's exactly how it went down.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for your honesty, Darrell Cook, owner of that billboard.
When you say you support the troops, do you mean it?
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So issue number 1, which will be on your ballot this November, has to do with tort reform, which is generally something that I think a lot of people on the right are fans of. In this particular case, the amendment that is on the ballot is garbage. It is bad tort reform, if you can believe it. Of course, with this legislature, of course you can. Not only, and you hear a lot of people about, setting the price on life. Look at this right here, for example. Because there's this new outfit that is going to be campaigning and try to get you to vote for issue 1. You need to be aware of them, and you need to be aware of their talking points. Arkansans for Jobs and Justice. See, they always like to do this. The amendment that actually last, I guess, maybe a couple election cycles ago, they had another amendment that they wanted you to vote for, and they always want you to know it's about jobs. And it wasn't about jobs at all. It was about debt. It passed because Asa went around cutting ads for them saying this was about jobs, and yet what it was about it was actually ending the cap. There was a cap on how much we could finance to give away to private businesses to try to bring jobs here. We could only, I think it was like 5% of what our general revenue was. Well, it made it unlimited, so they can now leverage us into oblivion forever. They can gamble. There's no limit to how much they can gamble in giving money away or bonds or that sort of thing to companies. But Asa went on and said it was about jobs, and people voted for it. So Arkansans for Jobs and Justice, they are this pro-bad tort reform group. And you look at Janet on Twitter responds to one of their tweets where they're thanking State Representative Sonia Barker for her leadership as co-sponsor of SJR 8, which now becomes Issue 1. And they go on to say Issue 1 protects Arkansans and makes Arkansas competitive with surrounding states. Janet writes, can you put a price on life? Just asking. And the Arkansans for Jobs and Justice Twitter handle writes this. Listen, life is definitely priceless. But, something about... I've been told before when you say start a sentence and then you say but, it negates the first part of your sentence. Life is definitely priceless, they say. Life is definitely priceless, but some lawyers demand more than a third of its value, or they won't take the case. Issue 1 provides reasonable civil justice reform to help Arkansas grow jobs and recruit doctors and provide ways to address and stop frivolous lawsuits that harm small businesses. Hang on a second. There's a lot of issues right there. You don't really go into you don't really go into the attorney issue. You kind of gloss over that. This is a huge power grab is what this bill is. And they're upset with attorneys because the attorneys demand a third of the value of your settlement. Okay, so what? If you don't like it, go find another attorney. If you can't find another attorney, go represent yourself in court. You probably won't have much luck in winning the case because guess what? You're not an attorney. You see, there are these things called jobs. There are these things called, specialty jobs. And attorneys are those people, and they go to school for it, and there's a reason, and they know the law, and they know how to operate in a courtroom, and they learn these things, right? And that comes at a price. That comes at a price when you hire that person. Now, that's just the attorney thing. And look, I know a lot of people don't have a lot of great things to say about attorneys, and I probably don't either. But if we're just talking about the principle of this argument is this. In whatever profession you're in, the government should not have the authority to tell you when you are engaging in private contracts with another person who's voluntarily seeking your services, what you can charge that person. That is ridiculous. And if it were any other profession, people would be, screaming bloody murder about it. But so you don't understand that. That's one of the things this tort reform bill does. And I would just say it's a slippery slope. If they can cap what a lawyer makes, can they not cap what a doctor makes? If they can cap what a lawyer makes in a class action lawsuit, can they cap what a radio host makes? Think about it. It's completely ridiculous. And so this is a terrible idea, and it's what's on the ballot. Not to mention the most egregious. You want to know what the most egregious part of the issue 1 is and why it's bad and you should vote against it? The most egregious part is the fact that it's going to give the legislature, that's right, the swampy legislator at the Marble Palace will have the authority to write rules of evidence for the courtroom, which violates separation of powers. It blurs the lines between the two. And is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous. Just like I don't like for judges to legislate from the bench, I certainly don't want legislators who are way more controlled by special interest to be able to slip something in there when there's a current class action lawsuit telling with a jury what they can and can't consider. And if you think that won't happen, then I think I would maybe say that you're a little naive about what goes on down there. We just got through telling you last hour about Senator John Woods and how he is claiming in his public corruption trial that the bribes he got, the kickbacks he got, were not kickbacks, that they were actually loans. Well, guess what? Those loans did not show up on his financial disclosure reports. But guess what? He has 30 days to correct it. That's right. You know why he has 30 days to correct it? If they were, in fact, loans? Because he wrote a law saying that if you get caught, you get 30 days to correct your financial reports. He wrote the law. He was anticipating this whole thing. And so that's just one example. You don't think a person cut from a similar cloth of Senator John Woods wouldn't take a little money, get a kickback from some healthcare entity who's involved in a class action lawsuit? And you don't think that maybe they'd figure out a way, you know what, the jury can't consider this. Can't consider this evidence. Can't consider that evidence. Setting rules of evidence. It's none of the legislator's business. This tort reform goes further than, in that regard, goes further than any other tort reform out there. It is, and then, of course, you do get the cap on human life, which really upsets a lot of people. I mean, it upsets me, too. I just am saying, like, the socialistic concept of saying to anybody in any profession that you can only make this much money with a private individual in a private contract is ridiculous to me and offensive to me at every level. Anyway, watch out for these people, Arkansans for Jobs and Justice. Watch out for them. Because you can go look at all their talking points and everything else. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Look, there's a whole lot of farmers that have my cell phone number, and when there's problems and they want to call, they got an issue, they call me, and I make myself available to my constituents, and I want them to know this, that this goes back to the look past the personality and the rhetoric and focus in on the numbers. The numbers are on our side. Now, I will say this, in the rhetoric that ensued immediately after the announcement of the tariffs, the Chinese are announcing they're going to retaliate X, Y, and Z and all this other kind of stuff. And you look at what's happening with the soybean market. So the soybean market reacts and starts to go down. I can't prove this, but common sense dictates, and based on the past behavior of China, you can probably assume that they shorted soybeans before they started the economic saber rattling.
Okay.
So they shorted the soybean market. That's number one. Run the price down through this process, and when it finds the bottom, then they buy up in cash. So good deal for China. Okay, so we again, this really kind of underlies the whole point of what Trump is making, is that they manipulate, they don't play by the rules, they utilize their status as a developing economy as they're recognized by the WTO, which absolutely is completely unfounded. They are not a developing economy. They are very developed and aggressively growing economy, and in fact a belligerent actor in the economy.
Yeah.
And so they shouldn't have that kind of status. But when they get that status, they get to play by a different set of rules. And so that's one thing to consider. It's been going on for 20-plus years. So all these things have to happen to get right. But in the short term, is this going to affect Arkansas farmers? It might to some degree, but by the time we get to harvest, you look at what's going on right now. The Chinese have a huge demand for soybeans and corn. They've got to buy it somewhere. Argentina is having a crop failure for all intent and purpose, major drought. They can't rely on Argentina to fill the orders and to meet their demand. So the soybeans are going to come from somewhere else. So in a manner of speaking, these commodities like soybeans and corn, to a large degree, are what you might call fungible, in that in the marketplace, they're going to move around. They're going to go where they need to go. So we might not necessarily have to directly sell our soybeans to China with a 25% tariff tacked on it. That's not even going to happen. But if it did, we could just transship through Argentina and other countries just like they've been doing with steel. So, the point I'm trying to make is our soybeans are going to find their way into the marketplace to fill the demand in the marketplace. And this is a short-term blip whereby the Chinese are doing everything they can to their own gain to take effect or take advantage of a market, a short-term market advantage, if you will, that they created.
Yeah.
So they just.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome back to the program today. The phone number, 870-275-9799. It is the beginning of the week, and we thank you for spending the beginning of the week with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Sound off over at facebook.com/Conduit News or conduitnews.com. You can watch us do the program live there, up and going, and we really appreciate the participation that we get from our great Facebook Live audience. You guys really doing some great work, and I love your comments. So I wanted to pivot, and I want to talk about this the idea of carving a financial niche out for yourself is exactly what John Woods is on trial for right now because of what he did and what is illegal about taking taxpayer money, steering it to a college, having the college pay a consulting firm, and the consulting firm paying the legislator or the legislator. Yeah, that's wrong. You shouldn't get money for doing that or for passing legislation and everything else. Here's the other question. Should you get paid as a lobbyist and be a legislator? And the answer to that is no, because you can't do those things. But can you still get paid by a lobbyist to not be a lobbyist while you're also a legislator? Let's explore, shall we? Yesterday, conduitforaction.org, they put out this piece, Working for a Lobbyist While Being a Legislator. Arkansas law prohibits a legislator from being a lobbyist. But did you know it's not against the ethics law for a state legislator to work for a lobbyist? So we're just dealing with semantics here, right? Shouldn't it be prohibited? Let's look at State Representative James Sturch, a Republican from South Side. He worked for a lobbyist. Did you know that? He worked for a lobbyist while being a legislator, which is technically totally fine. He's not a lobbyist and a legislator. He just works for a lobbyist while being a legislator. He began working for the lobbyist sometime in 2014, the year James Sturch was first elected as state representative. Now, that's interesting. You start working for the lobbyist the year you get elected. Must be nice. The documents do not show when he began work, but it may have been around the time he won the election, since he reported the income as being more than $1,000 and less than $12,500. Those are the two income categories used by the state when you report. For each of the first 2 years as a legislator, he reported income from the lobbyist of more than $12,500. Sturch didn't say, and was not required to say, I'm employed by a lobbyist. You don't have to say that. He just reported the name of the company and its address on his financial disclosure forms. Apparently, during his campaign for re-election in the 2016 election, a supporter of his opponent looked at Sturch's statement of financial interest and wondered, why does someone in Southside work for a company across the state in DeQueen? I think we even reported on this last year. Remember that, Joe? And we looked at a map of DeQueen all the way over there in the western part of the state, and we were mapping it out as like a 3.5, 4 hour drive every day for him to commute if he was going to work for this company. Why does someone in Southside work for a company across the state in DeQueen? This led to the discovery that Sturch's boss in DeQueen was also a registered lobbyist. It gets worse, Conduit for Action reports. The company Sturch reported as his employer and the lobbying firm have the exact same address and are located in the same house. Both companies use the name, quote, Legacy, end quote, in their name. Legacy. Possibly because people were becoming aware of the situation, either Sturch or the lobbyist decided to not continue the arrangement in 2017. In 2017, Sturch's report shows no job, only income from being a legislator. Below, you see there, is from James Sturch's 2017 report for the year 2016. Legacy Holdings and Properties is where he worked, right? And well, here, let's just compare the two names right here. Let's compare State Representative James Sturch's employer, 2014 through 2016, to the lobbying firm. Sturch's employer, the company name is Legacy Holdings and Properties, LLC. located at 314 West Gilson Avenue in DeQueen, Arkansas. The chief officer of the company is a Chad Gallagher. That's Sturch's employer, again, from 2014 to 2016. Then you look at State Representative James Sturch. Then you look at the lobbying firm. The lobbyist firm name is Legacy Consulting. So instead of Legacy Holdings, it changes to Legacy Consulting. Located at the same address, the firm contact is, again, Mr. Gallagher. And the registered lobbyist for the lobbying firm named Legacy Consulting is Chad Gallagher. Now that's interesting, right? Legacy Holdings, Legacy Consulting. Same address, same boss, and but it's fine, though. You're working for a lobbyist as a state representative, but you are not a lobbyist and a state representative. Conduit for Action writes that information for this article from the following documents. Sturch's Statement of Financial Interest reports for years 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017, corporate filing for Legacy Holding and Property, and Legacy Consulting lobbyist registration through 2014 to 2016. All the documents are available on the Secretary of State's website. So State Representative James Sturch should have known working for a registered lobbyist would raise a cloud over every vote he made. Do you think he realized that? Do you think he cared? Do you think maybe he thought nobody would ever find out about this? But if you're working for a lobbyist, not as a lobbyist, but for a lobbyist, wouldn't common sense dictate, because we know about the fallen nature of man, that every one of your votes are now possibly have ulterior motives? And maybe you're not representing your constituents in Independence County. Maybe instead you're representing some guy who lives in DeQueen, who has clients in his lobbying firm. One of them, I believe, wasn't the Arkansas Municipal League, and weren't they opposed to the special election reform? And didn't James Sturch walk out on special election reform right after he voted for it to ensure it would fail when they were going and doing the sound the ballot legislative maneuver? You can see that video at conduitforaction.org, by the way. Representative James Sturch should have known working for a registered lobbyist would raise a cloud over every vote he made. Will the legislature prohibit such a cozy relationship between legislators and lobbyists? Are they going to be okay with this? Yeah, I'm going to say yes. Conduit for Action writes it's certainly possible. Just in 2017, the legislature passed legislation to prohibit another type of dealing between legislators and lobbyists after it came to light that Senator Jake Files took a personal loan from a lobbyist reportedly to cover a hot check. The legislature enacted Act 1108 of 2017 to prohibit public officials from soliciting or accepting loans from lobbyists. Isn't working for a lobbyist worse than taking a loan from a lobbyist? Now think about that for a second. That's actually a really good point. Jake Files gets a personal loan from a lobbyist, a one-time of 30 grand. Of course, then he gets the $80,000 from Norsworthy, right? But what about like a reoccurring income? What about every week or every 2 weeks or every month? Isn't working for a lobbyist, you be the judge, is working for a lobbyist worse than taking a loan from a lobbyist? Is it the same thing? Does it bother you at all? Does it bother you, the taxpayer, that your legislator can be employed by a lobbyist and be a legislator at the same time? Does that bother any one of you out there? Conduit for Action urges, tell the politicians to eliminate the loophole and prohibit legislators from working for lobbyists. Representative James Sturch, by the way, is currently running in the Republican primary for the Senate District 19 against conservative incumbent Linda Collins-Smith. Senator Linda Collins-Smith. So we exposed this, I know we exposed this last year for sure. because we had the statement of financial interest, and you saw Legacy Consulting versus Legacy Holdings. And I think at one point his statement of financial interest said he was an office manager, which I thought was interesting because if you're an office manager, you think you need to be in the office, that's why we were calculating how many hours a day it would take for him to drive from essentially what is Batesville in Independence County all the way over to DeQueen, and how that didn't make any sense, how that was unreasonable. But, none of that even matters. It doesn't really matter if he was there or not doing the actual work, because the fact of the matter is, and this is what the article's trying to point out, is that you have a legislator elected to represent the people who is working for a lobbyist. Technically, not for the lobbying firm, but for somebody else in the same building, though, or for another entity run by the same guy who is a registered lobbyist. And so, what are we to do, folks? What are we to do? You see, you're not going to hear stuff like that. What we are doing is exposing the tricks and the loopholes of the Marble Palace to, I believe, a state that is ready for real reform and ready for change. And this type of stuff makes people furious. It makes people sick because you're not supposed to go down there, and because you're a state representative, you make extra money. Or because you're a state representative, you get to carve out a financial niche for yourself. I mean, this is the makings. And if you know what, I feel bad for State Representative James Sturtz that he thought that this was okay to do, or that somebody told him that this was okay to do. And again, technically, yeah. Legally, yeah. But again, I'm tired of even the appearance of impropriety. I'm tired of even the appearance of impropriety. And at the very least, if they want to leave where it is, at the very least, James Sturtz should have to disclose not that he gets income from this and let other people put it together. No, he should have to say, hey, this guy's a lobbyist and I work for him. I work for this guy who is a lobbyist. At the very least, the people have a right to know that. Now, see, there are some people, establishment Republicans and all the Democrats, that think that, our quest as limited government conservatives for this level of transparency and honest government is stupid, that we are bucking the system, and that we just need to sit down and shut up. Well, they're exactly right. We are bucking the system. We are trying to change things. We think, and here's the thing. I mean, I don't know if Democrats do this to their own. They don't really. But we as Republicans are actually trying to hold people who are in our own party accountable. Conservatives are trying to hold Republicans accountable, and this kind of stuff is the makings of why people don't trust their government, because they let us down. This is an example of the system letting us down. This is an example of an individual legislator letting us down, and this is, again, why people don't trust their government, because they think that you're dishonest. That's why our whiteboard all last week and today says we want honest government. This is an example of dishonest government because people just want to know. And most people can agree that you can't be a lobbyist and a legislator. That's illegal. So there's a loophole where you can work for one and be a legislator. That's wrong. Just like there's a loophole right now. You can't take money from a person to pass legislation for them. You can't have somebody say, hey, Senator, I'm going to give you this money if you'll pass this bill. That is illegal. And yet, if you're an attorney, there's a loophole, because as long as your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, you can take a client. The client can pay you, the legislator attorney, to do whatever you want. But it's not lobbying because we said it's not lobbying in the contract, so it can't possibly be lobbying. Most of us are raised to believe that that is wrong. Most of us are raised to believe that loopholes are ways to be dishonest. We want honest government. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell, back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's rrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's R Pawn at the light in Ash Flat, rrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm loving the information that gets dropped in our Facebook feed here. We have Bob writing that honest men don't get rich from politics. We have Tim writing that Legacy buys for the Municipal League. Yeah, and that's, if you look up Legacy, you'll see that one of their clients is the Municipal League. I think we really have a good concept or idea of why James Sturts walked out of special election reform. That was something the Municipal League did not want because it would have required an end to special elections unless there's an emergency for things like millage increases and property tax increases and tax increases for sales tax and things like that, because we, of course, know, thanks to the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, their study, that you've got a 70% chance of passing your tax increase if you don't do it during a primary or a general election. And we have a lot of people on local governments who I believe they might not believe they're being dishonest, but I think they are being dishonest by taking advantage of an electorate that will be smaller and more passionate about tax increases because other people, they know when the election is and they're out working and they're out doing their job and they don't have time to come and vote or really fend off a tax increase. And if you do fend off the tax increase in a special election, they come back next year and try to pass the same tax and they do it. Versus a general election where you only have like a 40% chance of passing your tax increase. The study, I think, was done from 1980 to now. I think from 1980. It might have been longer than that. But anyway. So James Sturts walks out on special election reform right as he had just voted for it and was the 51st vote. And then they start sounding the ballot to try to strike people who are not in their seats because it was a close vote and there were people that didn't want it to pass. And James Sturch, when they start getting close to the S's, they were going in alphabetical order. He looks at his cell phone. He gets a text message, looks at his cell phone, and then he gets up and walks out of the room, and they strike his name, and the bill fails, and it died right there. And it was a good piece of legislation by Senator Dave Wallace that made it through the whole process, and it was this close from being a reality. And it would have gotten you money for new voting machines, by the way. But no. State Representative James Sturch walked out. Could it be because the Municipal League is a client of Legacy Consulting and he works for Legacy Properties? He works for a lobbyist? I'd love for him to answer that question on record. James Sturch, you are welcome to come on this program and address that. And whatever else you want to talk about. But he's welcome to come on the program and address it. I mean, I would like to know why the first time James Sturch ever addressed the well of the House of Representatives was when he took to the floor to speak against the school choice bill by State Representative Jim Dotson. That's the first time he takes to the floor to speak against a key plank in the Republican Party platform. Strange, to say the least. Now, Tim on Facebook also writes that he's an office assistant / property manager, according to his documents. A property manager, office assistant. You'd think you'd have to be in the office, but he lives in Independence County, doesn't live in DeQueen, and that's a long drive. Strange. What else do we have here? Somebody writes, Representative Sturch blocked me in Facebook because updated to ask his position on Act 746. Tim writes, I live in District 19. So he doesn't want to know. So he doesn't want to answer how he feels on Act 746. Now that's a big deal because that's a huge Second Amendment issue as well. Anyway, this whole thing is interesting. You know, there are Republican primaries going on all across the state, and this particular one with Representative James Sturch and Senator Linda Collins Smith is another one of really Asa's potential, soldiers here. Asa Hutchinson wanted James Sturch to primary Linda Collins Smith, and the establishment leadership in this state wanted that to happen, and so that's what's going on because of Linda Collins Smith's voting record. Anytime Republicans vote more conservative than the leadership, it exposes the leadership as being frauds. It exposes them as perpetuating a deception. And it's a real shame that this is the state of the Republican Party right now, but it is what it is. And primaries are now the general election here in the state. So, anyway, I, for one, think that we were this close. If we could have, in the last session, we defeated the internet sales tax, we defeated the gas tax, they passed the tax increase on tires and created the new tax increase on tires. They passed the digital downloads tax. They increased the tax on candy and soda. They did these things, and so we had some victories at the end there, defeating the internet sales tax and the gas tax. I mean, it would have been a gargantuan tax increase had those things passed. Had we have gotten special election reform, had we have gotten that, it would have been huge. And it wouldn't have negated the Republicans trying to stop conservatism or the Republicans trying to grow government by getting more tax increases. Not all Republicans, I'm talking about the leadership. But it would have been a big win. Special election reform would have been a big win for the taxpayer because it would have ended these local districts trying to run the same tax increase year after year until they get it. And they would have only been able to run these during primaries or the general election, where their chances of passing go way down. And the reason that's a good thing is because there's something called the consent of the governed. And what you want is, if you're a public servant at all, if you're a superintendent, if you work, you want an accurate sampling of what the people that you serve believe and want, and specifically how to spend taxpayer dollars or how much to give the government. You want an accurate, you would think, right? But we have a system now in Arkansas with special elections that actually feed on that basic human emotion where we try to get as much as they'll give us. And when you stand up and defend special elections at all costs, when we're not talking about emergency, we're just talking about routine stuff, when you stand up and defend them at all costs, you are saying you would rather have lower turnout, and you are saying you would rather have less of an accurate sampling of what the people really believe. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is dishonest. It is a system that is rewarding really a deception and a theft. It's a theft is really what it is. Folks, that's all the time we have for this Monday. Check out this broadcast, facebook.com/Conduit News. It'll be up there just as soon as we sign off here in 2 seconds. And go to Conduit News as well, conduitnews.com. You can get the audio podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud, or again, conduitnews.com. Folks, have a great week. Have a great Monday. We'll be back here tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Arkansas, be safe.